Hi, good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Dialed In. I'm your host, Kyle Burt, and I'm joined this morning by James Clent. What's going on, sir?
Having a good morning so far. Thanks for having me on the show.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for being here. And we have a third guest here. What is her name?
Her name is Cookies. She's right on the chair there. She is keeping an eye on everything that's going on outside and keeping me honest and making sure I don't do anything I shouldn't be doing. And if you hear a bark, my dog Bambi is laying there too because they love to watch outside.
Awesome.
So,
They got a great setup there, a great view.
yeah.
Uh, Today we're going to be discussing digital e-commerce and digital transformation, kind of the joint function between the two. Before we get into the show, this is a recorded podcast, so we're live right now with you. So good morning, say hello, let us know where you're watching from, if you're watching this live or you're watching this on the replay. And we're going to be getting into the actual recording in just a second. And then before that, I just want to do a quick public service announcement, part of elevatexchange here. Coming up this July 10th, Elevate IT, now the TOLA DFW Technology Summit now goes virtual, and it's now the TOLA Technology Summit. So Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. Uh, you can register now on the web at Elevate IT or Elevate Exchange. Just look it up. July 10th, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. It's going to be a great event. I think there's about $5,000 worth of giveaways for people that show up that you can enter to win. So pretty cool stuff, and just a new way that we're taking this networking virtual. The show must go on. We must network despite social distancing. We're gonna get it done. We're gonna make it happen. So without that, I think a couple comments. Good morning, Robin. Hello all. Here we go. Let's start the show now. There will always be somebody stronger, faster, and smarter than you. Surviving depends on your adaptability to change. Those who are the most adaptable are dialed in. Welcome to Dialed In. I'm your host, Kyle Bird, joined by James Clent. Today, James Clent is a digital e-commerce and engagement executive, client and coaching consultant. Good morning, James. What are you ready to get dialed in? Good morning.
I'm here.
Let's do it. So what would you say, like, the thing that you are the most dialed into? Meaning, like, the thing that you, like, could not shut up about. Like, we would have to pull you up the stage.
So the thing that I'm most dialed into is the creating real value on the top line revenue generation for companies using digital media, but combining that with AI and machine learning. What a lot of companies do is they want to create a digital media platform, and what they typically do is they copy their website onto an app, and then are surprised that they're spending all this money and nothing comes out. We've seen that a lot as well with web sales. They're transferring from one sales channel to another sales channel, but they don't generate any new revenue. The best they do is reduce the cost of interaction, the cost of sales, of the sales process, but they're really not dialing into new opportunities, new lines of business, new upsell strategies, and the responsiveness of the audience. These days, things go viral in seconds, and if you're not poised to take advantage of that, to respond to that, you're bound to end up being too late to the market, and because of the delay in your supply chain, when the opportunity ceases, you're sitting with a whole bunch of old stock that you can't get rid of because the opportunity is gone, right? And so your supply chain stagnates. There's a lot of cost locked into that, and you don't get the benefits. Now, that's also why you need to have the AI and the machine learning. Where you do have the digital media, you want the machine to be able to do most of the handling instead of people. And then AI, you want to see how things are really developing, what it's doing. It's like a marketing campaign. You want to have a feedback loop in a marketing campaign to see how effective it is. And you want to see how well the results are coming in from what you're doing. And is that seasonal? Is that another reason? What are the reasons that the effects take place? And if you combine all of that, you can really make a difference in the company.
Oh yeah, and especially like right now, right? So having that digital media and that digital platform is huge because that's all we have right now. That's right.
Right. Dallas just now, as an example, ordered everybody to wear a mask when they go into any particular store or a restaurant. And even though they say we cannot order anybody to wear a mask, they're doing it covertly by fining the one who owns the store and saying, if you don't comply with this order where you have to have people wear masks, we're going to fine you $1,000. Well, that's just using an indirect method to achieve the same thing and saying we're not forcing the population to wear masks. And so it becomes harder and harder to go places. We don't see much of COVID, but it makes it hard. Yeah. I had a friend visiting me from New York. He says, it's like being in a different world here in Texas. It's like it doesn't exist, while in New York City, you can see it everywhere, right? And so it's we don't see it on a day-to-day basis. So it's very hard to realize that we need to do things. And yeah, we do everything digital now. Amazon is thriving.
Right. So at what part of the process do you think that there's gaps here with digital media, right? Obviously connects to B2C demand and sales, right? But at what part do you come in and do you see these gaps here that need to be filled?
Typically, people stop at the investment in the technology, right? They think first the thought is that, hey, I can buy an app for 99 cents in the App Store. Why does this have to cost me $250,000 to get something up and running, right? That's the first thing, because it needs to interact with things. You need to design it. You need to make it. It's not just you grab something off the shelf and like, I have an app. Secondly, that they believe that the technology will take care of itself. And we've all seen that change doesn't happen until you change the behavior of the company, which is a culture change. And the real change needs to happen in process, right? You cannot have a process where you're supposed to be hanging on the telephone, typing the order, and that is your process. And then a web order comes in and you get it on an email and you start typing it into the ERP system. So you need to change your process. You need to change your culture. And with that, you need to change the appraisal processes. What do the people need to focus on? So you need to redesign your organization, your job descriptions, and your SOPs, standard operating procedures, so that you can take advantage of and respond properly to the new opportunity that you've opened up. And companies that are successful in doing that are hugely successful. They can respond quickly. They can really turn nimbly upon things that are happening. And others that are using maybe machine learning to take those emails and enter them into orders into the ERP system, they have a lag. And so, but even that is faster than having a person typing it, And so it is all about behavioral change within the company.
Right. And so you talk a lot about, just in previous chats and just on LinkedIn and whatnot, you talk a lot about, lean operations and digital transformation and how this all kind of plays into it. So what's your take there?
Lean operation comes out of the manufacturing side and distribution side. It's a process where you are constantly reevaluating yourself as to what you're doing and how it's supporting the process of the objectives that you want to achieve. And a lot of companies and a lot of process IT departments are locked in resource lock. I have a certain group of people that can do a certain number of things. Like a few years ago, C# and C++ was it to be developing apps for the corporation in. Today, the most used language is Python and JavaScript. And so if your resources are all locked up in C#, there's a lot of things that you cannot do effectively. So you're trying to fix things with C# resources. Otherwise, you have to lay off, you have to hire. And by the time that cycle is done or retrain, it doesn't matter. You're 6 months down the road and you cannot nimbly respond to things. So being lean means a lot about partnerships, finding the right partners so that you can quickly start things up and quickly shut things down. Hey, that's the same thing I said about our sales process down the road, right? The whole organization needs to operate that way. It cannot be that, hey, I see an opportunity. IT, we want to jump on this. Sure, 9 months from now, I'll be ready. That cannot be the answer. If that's the answer, the business doesn't have an opportunity. So with that, lean operations and microservices architecture, having these little pieces that can all fit together in that architecture, and you can incrementally deliver functionality really quickly.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. No, microservices is so huge right now.
Yep.
Now you've been a CIO for the better part of your career in various industries, in manufacturing, in pharmacy, in healthcare, and in hospitality, like hotels. So you've seen quite a lot, right? You've seen quite a lot of different industries, and you know, and could you maybe tell us like how that role of CIO kind of differs across those industries, and then also kind of how it's similar?
A lot of these industries have the feeling that they're unique. In other words, they need someone, healthcare particularly. If you're not having any healthcare experience, you do not understand healthcare IT. And for a part, that is true because of the um, urgency and the need for correctness, because you're working with patients' lives. But principles of IT and principles of business are practiced across those industries. So it's really easy to move from one industry to another, as long as you take the time to orient yourself and learn what the industry is about. What are the key drivers in an industry? And typically that is a conversation with the president of the company, the chief marketing officer, sales department. Accounting is the same all across. There's very little different there, but find out what makes them tick. And you do that during the interview phase, and orient yourself on beforehand. So do a search on Google, information is there, learn something about the industry and have that conversation and ask questions. Yeah, I'm not paid as a CIO to know everything. I'm paid to get to the right answer with the right team for that particular situation. And that's the difference, and that works across industry. But there's a lot of things, like we talked about lean. Lean comes out of manufacturing and distribution. I brought lean into healthcare. I brought lean into hospitality because the principles are the same. The principles of doing business, order to cash, is typically the same all over, right? And so as long as you focus on those things, the IT will follow. If I sit in the boardroom and I start talking about, Exchange and the backup processes of Exchange and how email filtering happens, what happens is they take out their cell phones, they start reading their email, and you've lost the communication.
Right.
So my task is more and more to be able to talk in terms of business value, to talk in business terms, and be succinct and non-technical in that explanation.
So it's this whole like duality of business transformation over digital transformation, even though like we're speaking the same language, but really we're all trying to speak the same language and not speak digital and IT and technical in those meetings and put people to sleep, right? We're trying to speak the business value,
Right.
and bridge everyone together, right?
Yep. And that is, for that, you will need financial knowledge. So if you don't have it, get it. Because the CEO, the sales, chief sales officer, the chief finance officer, they're all talking numbers. If you don't follow the numbers, if you cannot talk those numbers, you're already at the sideline, right? So you have to understand those values. You have to understand what drives the company. You have to understand the intricate consequences of choices. IT for the longest time has run on CapEx. Capital expenditures that can be depreciated over time. That's no longer the situation. It's all OpEx. It's all in immediate cost, and but as long as you can translate that back into the drivers that it supports and the value that it brings, there is no objection to that. As long as the cost of operations is much lower than the cost of sales, the value of sales, the revenue, it's about profit margin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what the cost is and what the operational cost is, as long as it's the more you can make it variable, the easier it is to run things.
Yeah.
And variable means directly attributable to the execution of the processes that you're doing. And so what I see is, and I make the analogy to a lot of my colleagues, is you're a CIO. You have two options. You can be the CFO, strategic, forward-looking, determining the course of the company, or you can be the controller, keeping the lights on. And if your comfort zone is in the infrastructure and the techie part of things, you're becoming the controller because you cannot communicate value. right? If you cannot communicate value, you don't understand the sales processes, you're not versed into reading a balance sheet, you're losing that fight in the boardroom. And it's really important. And so for you to be able to be strategic, you have to come up with ideas. You have to look at what is the company doing, where's the company going. Like, for instance, last year I started when I was still in hospitality, I started a study that says, hey, virtual reality or augmented reality, how is that going to affect the bread and butter of the company? Because 85% of the revenue came from the business travelers. Yeah. So we have video conferencing, and video conferencing, as you know, has taken a leap forward with COVID. What will virtual reality do for the opportunity to collaborate, worldwide? And the answer was, as long as you're sitting in an office, you don't have the privacy to be deprived of your regular inputs. But now with Corona, we see a huge uptake in video conferencing, in collaboration processes on a remote basis. And so I don't believe that in hospitality, the occupancy will go back really soon to levels that are from before COVID. Even January, February, those levels will not be achieved. Maybe never again. Leisure travel, yes. Business travel will be forever impacted, because we've all learned to work this way, and it's working. I don't know how it's going to work when we have full employment again, because we're talking about 13-14% unemployment at the moment. But it's working. It's a change, and so this change will have lasting effects in the hospitality industry, and it will have lasting effects on the way people work together.
Do you kind of feel maybe a little bit like, being a CIO, being like the head of all this technology, and knowing that we've been capable of this for years, right? Like, we've been capable of this. We know like the business value, like people would probably work better from home, like as a whole. Do you kind of feel a sense of almost like I told you so a little bit, and then in there, and it's just like yeah, this is kind of
No.
expected if you work from home, that it's gonna work.
For high-level professionals that now can work uninterruptedly, it is more effective.
Yes.
However, for the larger part of labor in the United States, it's not going to be more effective, right?
Yeah,
try to run 100 people accounting department when everybody's working from home without having the processes and the principles in place to verify productivity and activity. Right? It's going to be a lot harder. How are you going to manage a distribution center with people working from home? People distribute goods, still need to be distributed.
Yeah.
So if you look at the largest population of people working, I don't know that it is that effective. For professionals that can now hunker down and really get things done without being disturbed, yes, I could say the productivity levels are going up. But at the same time, you lose a lot of things. The water cooler talks are gone. The grapevine as to understanding and learning things about what other parts of the company are working on and departments are doing, which you get from just walking by, having conversations. All of that is lost. So we need to build new information lines within the company. We need to find out what's going on. We have to have, maybe a wiki is the answer. I don't know what the answer is. We'll figure it out. So but we need to find.
We're losing that connectedness.
Yes.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So productivity can go up in certain areas. I think there is a loss in other areas, but there's a lot of companies talking about we're not going back to the office, because if you look at DFW, the average price per square foot is what, $30, $33. Which is an enormous amount of money and burden on a company, if you think about it. So if you can avoid that, I don't want to be in commercial real estate right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's an industry that's going to be hit pretty hard, huh? So circling back around to digital media and engagement, right? With what the work you're doing now, tell us a little bit more about that. Like, if you have any examples or stories there with regard to how the digital media and engagement play to a brand's e-commerce, right?
Right. So let's go back to the most recent one. It's in hospitality, and I'm trying to bring this strategic thinking and complete thinking to in my new role. But what we saw is we were doing some digital marketing through websites where we try to do some web sales, and all we found is that people moved from one channel to another. Now in hospitality, most of the bookings are done through either Hilton, Marriott websites, or the Travelocities and what have you in this world, right? So we added costs without gaining revenue. That was number one that we found out. So we tried to take a different approach. We built a company called OpenKey that makes the telephone into your door key. Now, Hilton and Marriott have done that. They were not very successful. This company has been very successful in China, in Asia, in Europe, and it's starting to get traction here too. Some large chains have now signed up to it. But the thing that made it so popular is that it's not just that thing, the phone opening your door. It is, I can see by you having the app on the phone and your geolocation, your GPS being on, I can see you land on the airport. So as soon as you land on the airport, I can give you a text message. Hey, your room will be ready. We see that you're here. Welcome. Glad to have you back. And I make sure that that room is ready for that guest to get into as soon as they come in, because I send them the room number. The room is ready. They don't have to stop at the front desk. They can just walk through onto their room, use their phone, go in, and have all the digital conveniences that they need, because people bring their own devices. Secondly, we were able to see behaviors in that app. We allowed them to do room service. We allowed them sitting in the pool and order things and have access to information. They could contact people through chat, which was usually not a person, but it was the machine answering. And only when there were things that the machine couldn't answer was it transferred to a person. And so we could see that somebody was walking through one of our resorts and they like a certain Starbucks coffee because we know they bought it, and give them a coupon or remind them, bless you, and help them, make them aware of opportunities in either the hotel, the resort, or the surrounding environment. And what we saw was an enormously positive feedback on that. Wow. But it required the inputs through the app, the engagement with the customer, learning their preferences without being intrusive, and responding to it and creating an engagement, right? Even if you only have the attention of the customer and the appreciation of the customer, you've already won. To give you an example, in the early 90s, I used to travel. I lived in Amsterdam in Europe. I used to travel a lot to San Jose, to the hard disk company of IBM that I worked for at the time. And the San Jose Marriott, at some point, when I made a reservation, they would call me in Amsterdam, international phone call. Mr. Clent, we see that you're coming again. We have your room ready. I had a room that I stayed in that I really liked. We have your room ready. You're from here to there. These things are all taken care of. That is making the customer feel special, appreciated, and part of. And a lot of us really like that. Others think, don't interfere in my life, right? So as long as you don't interfere with my life, but give me conveniences and an opportunity to really feel like I'm luxuriously treated. And so that's a fine line to find out. Right. It makes all the difference. Another example, a few years ago, I was in, again, San Jose, because I have family there, and I was at a restaurant, and I was asking if they had room available for us. We were a party of 12 to sit, and no, they didn't. And so we walked away. Now, I was there on my phone doing things. I didn't give him my phone number, didn't give him anything. We're walking out of the restaurant. 5 minutes later, I get a text message. Mr. Clent, you were just here asking for a room for 12. We got a cancellation. We have room now. Text message on my phone. I never gave him my phone number.
Wow.
They identified me, they were non-intrusive, and they provided me a service that was a win-win for both.
Right.
Those things we can do today.
So you obviously went back and got the table, right?
Yep, I did.
Because it's like, it's a win.
Hey, it was not intrusive, and it allowed me to have my party sit down. It was I was treated like an important guest. And so there's a lot of things you can do that way. I was talking to a company that has a lot of gas stations, and they were trying to build an app. And I said, you have IoT and an app. You can have devices, which we learned from the key application, at your pump to know exactly where somebody is. Well, I can turn that around from a positive to a negative. I can also see when they're pumping at the competition. So those are the people that I need to give coupons, that I have to pay attention to. My loyal customer that comes to my pump no matter what, I still want to treat them right, but I don't have to give them incentives to come to my place. I need to give incentives to those swing voters that are, coming to my gas station one time and going to another gas station another time.
Yeah.
And so those are what I would call those feedback loops that you can pull out of the data when you're tracking your mobile app, and without being intrusive. You give them the opportunity, you give them a lower price, you give them a better whatever service or other thing that you can incentivize this customer with without being intrusive, and you still create a better top line.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting underlying theme here with respect to all of it, and that is, us collectively, we're giving up a little bit of our privacy for that frictionless, better customer experience. But we're
Right.
doing that like almost instinctively, like without even thinking. Yet we grab a microphone and say we care about security and privacy, and then we download all these apps, and we want that better experience. We want that frictionless experience.
Right. And you can do that. You don't have to be invading someone's privacy to do it. It is all about how you use the information. It's all about, and that's exactly what GDPR and CCPA is all about.
Yeah.
It is about how do you use the information, and I'm not selling the information to anyone. I'm not gaining money by selling the information. I am using the information to respond to your preferences. Yeah, if I bombard you with 25 text messages during the day constantly that are irrelevant to what you're doing and what your preferences are, I'm intrusive.
Yeah.
And there's a fine line. There's absolutely a fine line, because what is intrusive for one person is excellent guest service for the next. And those are things you need to find out. And so you need to build those loops in there so that you can have feedback and say, no, I don't want to see this anymore. Okay, cool. Then we stop. And so you need to be prepared for that, and helping companies figure that out and how to do that, and to set it up such that the customer experiences it as excellent customer service. That's what I do. And that's what I do best.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the conversation so far, James. As we're wrapping up here, I got a few more questions for you. First one, just throughout your history as being a CIO, what would you say the best piece of advice you've ever received has been, or that stands out the most?
Listen, and speak last. Secondly is, if you cannot articulate the problem at hand on something the size of a business card, you haven't understood the problem. So don't communicate it, right? So be succinct, be direct, and know your facts. Yeah. And the other thing of advice that I really learned in this last role is that a lot of us don't focus on that, is contracts are not for when things are right. Contracts are written to protect us when things are wrong. And so learning to read and modify contracts is really important, because when the shit hits the fan, you want to be protected. And so, yeah, all's number of advice. And then the last piece of advice is build your team. You're as strong as the team. And so spend as many hours as you want on mentoring, training, develop your team. Yeah, they are your lifeblood. They are your success.
Yep, absolutely. And with respect to mentoring, what would you say to the aspiring CIO who looking to climb the ranks?
Find a CIO that you can identify with first. It's okay to be uncomfortable. It's not personal. And learn the business. Yeah. And then last but not least, mentoring is not about creating mini-me's. I wrote an article on LinkedIn about that. It's about creating maxi use, meaning get the maximum out of the person, who they are, because unless you speak with a genuine voice, that is your voice, people won't follow you, people won't believe you, and people will not, they will start second guessing you. If they see your true heart, knowing that you're vulnerable and knowing that you are not perfect and make mistakes, they are far more willing to listen. And then if you look at the 5 drivers that make people stay, only one is salary. The rest is make them feel appreciated, give them an opportunity to grow, give them an opportunity to develop, make them part of. All of those things are more important than salary most of the time. And so to build a great team for people that want to be there, that go the extra mile, focus on those areas. Don't ignore the salary, but salary alone is not it. What I do to people is I promise them one thing, and that is you will do things you never thought you could do. I don't promise them titles. I don't promise them money. You will be doing things that you never thought you could do. And I do. And that's important. Because people feel, wow, appreciated, growing. I've achieved things that I never thought of that I could achieve. And that helps enormously.
Oh, yeah, 100%. What's the best business book you've ever read?
Wow.
or any book you could apply to business?
That's a really good question. Nothing comes to mind at this moment, but I think
I got you on one.
It's a book about execution. I don't know the title right now, but it's execution. Strategy is a great thing, but if you can't make it happen, it means nothing. And that's the same thing what we talked about at the beginning is, I want a digital application or a digital tool, a mobile app. It's great to have one, but unless you do something with it, it means nothing. I had a CMO once that was like, yeah, we can mine Facebook and find out what people think about our products. I said, great. And then once you know, what are you going to do with it? Well, wouldn't it be great to know? I said, are you going to change your product? Are you going to make changes to your product, to your shipping, your packaging, your product itself? No. I said, then there's no use in mining Facebook.
That's a great point. That's a very great point. We spend too much time on whiteboards and not enough time like in the trenches,
right?
Doing the work. I agree with that 100%. What do you say to people that say, well, what if we go out there and fail, and what if it doesn't work? And that's why we spend all this time on the whiteboard to make sure that when we go out there, it actually works. So like,
right.
What's the balance of like whiteboard time versus in the trenches?
You can never fully envision the future, and especially not with people that have a day job, right? So folks that are part of your project, that have a day job, that have all the pressures of that day job on them, they cannot invest their time. So this is why Agile is so powerful, is because you prototype. Oh, it sinks in. Now I see it, but if this is possible, then I really would like that, right? The other thing that you really need to understand is that when you start whiteboarding, the first 3 weeks, people only talk about their daily problems, which is maybe 5 to 10%, 20% of their business, but that's what they're fighting every day. So they come up with the problems, not with the process. And so Agile microservices architecture allow you to bypass a lot of these things because you're in a direct conversation and you really can see the prototype coming to life, upon which time folks, their imagination starts working, their understanding becomes reality. Where if you do an 18-month project, you design the first 3 months, you go into execution phase, and people have forgotten the business has changed, and now they come back and test. It's like, oh, well, this is not what I expected. Whereas in Agile and microservices, you can do that almost immediately, and they can follow you, and they can see what happens. Oh, but now this is possible. Can I do that? Oh, now I get it, right? And that aha moment is when you got them. So try to find low-hanging fruit. What I did at United Orthopedic Group, I was developing analytics for the sales department. And the first thing I built was nothing more than an order prediction module that said, hey, by this time the customer should be ordering this product this much, etc. And if that didn't happen and 2 days later it hadn't happened, I would send them a trigger, an email saying, hey, this customer was supposed to order. They did not. Give them a call. Their lost sales went down 50%. So without doing anything other than having a little order prediction module, telling the salesperson to give the customer a call, have a conversation, figure out what was going on, we improved the top line revenue of the company by 4.5% overall. But more importantly, the sales commission incentives of the salespeople, they had a top year. Guess what? They came running. What else can you do for me? What can you do? Is there, can I look at that? Can I, right? All of a sudden, they're driving the change. And I don't have to be the salesperson anymore, because the CIO these days is more of a salesperson than anything else. They're selling opportunity to the board.
Wow. Wow. No, those are great stories, man. Great stories. Last question for you. Being dialed in is all about being adaptable and being the most adaptable to change. So what would you say that you do on the daily, like a habit to keep yourself dialed in, keep yourself adaptable?
Listen to my children a lot. You know, I have a teenager and a twinner, and stay in touch with people. You know, be curious. Because I'm an old fart, right? I'm still at the time that we didn't have email. You know, my daughter asked me that, how did you talk to your friends? You had no cell phones. And, yeah, you just got on your bike and you drove. You drove there. You figured it out, right? No. Listen, haven't wildly creative imagination, and keep reading, keep studying. It's never over. You know, keep learning. And listen to people. Listen. As I said before, that's the only thing. And common sense goes a long way. You don't have to be an expert at the detail level. You have to be an expert at the opportunity level. So read business books.
Awesome. So I appreciate that. So if you're out there listening, listen. That's the key takeaway from this. Thank you so much, James. I appreciate you being on the show today. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next Tuesday, every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Next Tuesday, we have a double feature. We're going to start doing doubles, so back to back. So that'll be an interesting little twist on the show. So look for us next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much, James. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.